there's the Steelers also. I just saw them, and Tomlin to me looked as engaged and as into the gig as ever. And TJ Watt was telling me this guy doesn't change, and I will run through a wall for him. And then you see the results are very un-Tomlin-like, with George Pickens basically saying, I don't want to turn into Tank Dell. And he's going to go back out there again because these are the best players the Steelers have. And the sense I get from Steelers fans is many of them want to try something else. What do you think is happening there before I let you go?
I would argue the George Pickens thing is the most Mike Tomlin type thing that's occurred, simply because in terms of wide receivers with various levels of attitude issues for a team that's had Antonio Brown and Martavis Bryant and Chase Claypool, this is kind of what Mike Tomlin does, which is, and it's organizational philosophy, wide receiver. Those guys a lot of times are different cats. So you take the guy who other teams might be downgrading because of various character quirks that they have or different issues. And you say, this guy's really talented. We can plug him in. We can get the most out of him. And at the point that goes to a different direction and we no longer can get the most out of him, then we move on and we trade Claypool for a 2. We trade Martavis Bryant for a 1 to say John Gruden gave up a 3 for him once upon a time. There's different ways you can, and obviously Antonio Brown was also traded out there to the Raiders at one point. So in terms of Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, I know that there's speculation when they're going through a rough patch, and it feels like we have one of these, Rich, every year where the Steelers go through a rough patch, and is what's going to happen with Mike Tomlin? Is he going to move on? What I would tell you that I know is Tomlin's got 1 year left on his contract. Historically, the Steelers have redone coach contracts with 2 years to go. So that was a little bit unusual that they did not extend him. However, from everything I have been told, that's not an indication that they don't view Mike Tomlin as a long-term part of the plan. I believe, and again, we're sitting here December 22nd. There's plenty of time for different things to play out, but I believe the only way Mike Tomlin would not return as the head coach of the Steelers would be if Mike Tomlin decides there's someplace else that he wants to go, and he initiates that conversation with Art Rooney. If that were to take place, if Mike Tomlin were to one way or another become available here, I do believe that there would be a trade market. I do believe that there potentially would even be some teams that have current head coaches in place that would be willing to move on from their head coaches to bring Mike Tomlin in. But again, we're so far away from that. It would be unlike the Steelers to trade a head coach or to move on. They obviously, I think it's well documented, Rich, that they rarely move on from their head coaches. And you have to ask yourself, from Tomlin's perspective, he's well paid at this point in Pittsburgh. He has a tremendous amount of authority over every aspect of the football operation there. Is there someplace else that he feels like he could go and have as good or better of a situation? Or on some level, there's not a lot of coaches who last 17 years in one building. Does everybody at some point say it's just time to move on? Again, I believe that's a conversation Mike Tomlin would need to initiate. And at this point, there's no signs inward or outward that conversation has or will take place.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.